Kyle Whittingham states that NIL was a major factor in two of Utah's top players deciding to enter the transfer portal. We're talking about it on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We're all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, any podcast network too. You guys can head over there and follow us. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets. If you win your first bet, you can get that bonus money. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined on today's show by Matt Patton, a Utah Rivals writer. And Matt, we're going to talk about some of the roster building comments that Kyle Whittingham made. It's crazy how different this team will be, and close with it's really cool. Karene Reed made the Senior Bowl, but we have to start with a story that honestly I thought was over. This NIL, Keanu, Tanauvasa, Calhoun, their decision to enter the portal. But when the head coach Kyle Whittingham says this is what happened, it's worth talking about. So in Kyle Whittingham's press conference a couple days ago, in which him, Jason Beck, and Morgan Scalley all spoke, he was asked how much did NIL play in the decision for Keanu, Tanauvasa and Calhoun to enter the transfer portal. When he said the absolute overriding factor was NIL. There's no doubt about it. ... Like, in my opinion. Like, there was a pause before I got to in my opinion. And I know there's a lot of people online who have said this is the reason Tanauvasa left and all the things like that. But I absolutely believe Kyle Whittingham, who had conversations with these players, when we saw these players before their decision to enter the portal openly tweet out they were staying at Utah, we can talk about what happened and where they ended up at. And I've done that a lot on this show too. But the fact that Kyle Whittingham is now saying that NIL played a factor in their decision to enter the portal, it's hard to ignore.
Well, and I kind of wish that players would just own up to that. I mean, it's not such a bad thing to say, yeah, I could get paid more money to go over here, and it still works out great with my situation. And, you know, I mean, because he went on that, if you saw the BYU clip where he went on and he said, you know, I went because I wanted to feel loved by my coaches without any contingencies on how I play, basically. Mm-hmm. It was hard to buy that as being the main factor. Maybe he felt that way, but I have a hard time believing that the Ute coaches didn't love him as a person, regardless of how his performance was, because he really didn't have great performances until just last year. He was still working his way up the roster, and I'm sure that he was still, taken care of that way. So really the ultimate factor, it's the money. It's show him the money, and BYU could offer more. And I think Kyle made it pretty clear in the press conference that they have pretty set standards of how much they want to be paying for each level. And they basically have a budget. And it sounds like Keanu Tanauvasa went out of that budget, and Utah said, okay, we're going to let you walk.
Yeah. Going back to the comments he made, like I said, about the coaches, that's one where, look, and I'm sure he has a good relationship with BYU's coaches, but it doesn't seem like you were thinking about transferring until something changed. And like we all think, and what's been reported by several Utah reporters, what Kyle Whittingham has now commented on, is that's NIL. And maybe you are excited to build a new relationship with your coach. Maybe that was part of it, but you were still clearly happy at Utah, and you'd been a starter for 2 years in a row now. So things were going well here. So yeah, that's where there's been some things that have been said that haven't always added up as it just seems with the whole situation too. And once again, like Tanauvasa, Calhoun, like I totally get those guys entering the portal to make more money. Tomorrow is not guaranteed in terms of NFL future ever. So if you have that opportunity, I understand what they did. It just is always tough too when you're tweeting out your support openly, when you're trying to recruit other guys, or when you're shading other players for not coming. And then you also end up leading. But I think it's hard. Like we said, there's been a lot of like, was there NIL involved? Was there not? Like, Kyle Whittingham is now saying that NIL was involved. Yes. And I don't feel like we can ignore that. And it happens in college football. It's going on everywhere right now. This is the way the game is played, that NIL is a factor in these decisions. But I do feel like it was a major factor, and that I'm going to trust Kyle Whittingham. People all the time I've seen a lot of comments talking about like, where's the proof? Like, where's this? Where's that? I'm going to trust Kyle Whittingham's words.
That's proof
over anything else so far.
No, Kyle Whittingham's very careful with his words. he's done, probably more press conferences than just about any coach that's coaching at that level. And he thinks about what he says before he says it. And if that's what he is saying, then that's the truth. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. He's a straight shooter. So yeah, you can trust in that. And that's what it is.
He is a straight shooter. And I do believe that Utah is going to be okay at both positions. I do think they'll miss I think as of right now, I'll say they'll miss Tanauvasa more than Calhoun. I think Calhoun's a really good player, but now that they want to move Snowden to the outside, you pair him, Elijah Davis out there, and then the wealth of incoming corners you have, I think Utah will be good there. We did see the spring roster came out. No David Fotu on Utah's roster, which I thought he was a guy who might come back, but you get Vaimahi, you get Dallas Vakalahi too. So it's two decent starters. And, I'm just blanking on the other guy Morgan Scally brought up in his press conference too. Yes. So he's an intriguing guy that I think could be a rotation piece. I think Utah will be good there. And Morgan Scally said as much that they've lost elite players before. As I mentioned, I think they'll feel that Tanauvasa loss a little more this year than in years past because they also lost to Puna and Peppa. And it's just a lot of guys to lose in one year. But I do feel like it's not Utah's run defense and just their defense in general is not going to fall off a cliff without those two players.
No, not at all. I mean, and it was interesting too with Cameron Calhoun, how I don't remember who said it now, if it was Whittingham or if it was Scally, but basically saying he didn't have a guaranteed spot to start, that he was going to have to compete for it, and that he was going to be in the mix to be a starter. And they were like, just like he was last year, which is true. I think he only technically started one game. So I think in a defensive tackle too, I think the depth is it's a little bit of a concern, but I like how they're gonna wait and assess that after spring. But what I found interesting was how he mentioned Jonah Leah needing to get to that weight, and that he finally is at that weight, and they're feeling really good about him. But what was exciting was he said the new guys, the freshmen, are already there. They're already at weight. And so I think they're feeling pretty confident in the freshmen. And I think, you saw that with Vakalahi being able to step in right away as a freshman. And so I could see that happening again too with some of these other guys. They got some good freshmen coming in.
It's too early to go breakout players. If I could do one, Dallas Vakalahi, I think he's going to be a star. I think he's going to be amazing. I think like him next to Tanauvasa, because Vaimahi is more like he's just solid. I feel like we know we're going to get Vaimahi, and he's like a worse version. He's still a really good player, but like he's not quite as good as Junior Tafuna to me, but he's a guy who just takes on the double team. He's going to do the dirty work. Dallas to me is a guy like I think he's going to get five. I think he has a really good shot to get 5 sacks. I mean, he had 2.
Yeah, he's quicker. He's quick.
He's quick. And you make a huge jump freshman to sophomore year. Think Spencer Fano, think Caleb Lomu. So I'm really fired up for him. I think he's going to work his way into being one of the dudes on this Utah defense. So really excited to see what Dallas can do on that side of the ball, and as well as the rest of this Utah talent coming together. At the defensive tackle room, it's a lot of the same players, but there is a lot of newness. We mentioned that with the cornerback room. Things are changing with Utah because things have changed in college football. NIL, a factor, the portal. It's a new Utah roster. Want to talk about just how new? Because Kyle Whittingham mentioned a number about how new this team is going to be, and it's pretty crazy. We're going to talk about that number and how, if Utah can succeed with that much roster turnover in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keep every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And speaking of the NFL, the divisional weekend is here. It's always one of the best weekends of the year. You factor that in with the national championship. It's going to be a great week for football action. Are the Chiefs going to be able to get past the Texans, Bills, Ravens, 2 of the best QBs in the NFL facing off? Rams, can they keep it rolling against the Eagles? How about the national championship game, Ohio State, Notre Dame? Can't wait for that one. Can the Commanders, who are heating up now, can they pose a problem for the Lions? Probably not, but either way, NBA, NHL, college basketball, and even one more college football game to go along with some NF2. FanDuel has you covered. Make sure you head over to FanDuel Sportsbook today. All right, Matt, as we look at the college football landscape, it is always evolving and changing, and rosters are as well, too. This is a direct quote from Kyle Whittingham, and it was in his opening statement, and just about how different this Utah roster is. There's lots of turnover, 30 new faces, and when you look at the 12 to 15, we might add again, talking about the spring portal, and maybe even some other guys who still got to come to campus, we'll be at a 50% roster makeover. And he said the senior class definitely played a large role in that with how many COVID guys you had that left, but it is still crazy. You can be at 50% roster turnover in today's era. And I think while some people might be scared when they hear that and go, wow, can we really win with that much turnover? The answer to that is absolutely yes. And all you have to do is look around college football. Indiana, Arizona State, Colorado are just a few examples of teams that completely reshaped their roster and very quickly won games right away, Matt.
Yeah, it definitely can work. And I think especially with the types of guys that they're bringing in, I think that's why Kyle Whittingham felt like it was a net positive overall. And the turnover is kind of at the right spots, turning over that running back room, which outside of Mekhi Bernard, Bernard started out well, but really wore down as the season went on. And then there just wasn't much to lean on. And so love seeing that turnover. You're not turning over at the offensive line. That's huge when you have 5 starters coming back. That continuity is very important. And so I think that they're turning over at the right spots, and I think they're gonna be all right.
Mm-hmm. Like you said, they're turning it over at the right spots. The haters are going to find whatever angle they want to hate on Utah and hate on whatever team they cheer for in general. With Utah's offense, if they brought everyone back, it'd be like, oh my gosh, why are you bringing this offense back?
Yeah.
You didn't produce right. Now it's players are leaving and everyone's like, what's going on? And I'm not saying I haven't done videos too saying like, hey, what's going on with Utah? But the truth is, in today's college football, when things go bad, you have the power to change them quickly. And that is exactly what Utah decided to do. Not just hired a new offensive coordinator. And it's like, okay, this is what you have to work with. Like you don't just have to fix the car with what's in the garage. Like you can go outside of the store and grab this new piece and grab this new piece and assemble something new and even better. And I love that Utah's been aggressive. They've gotten a Devin Dampier. They've completely revamped the quarterback room, completely revamped the running back room, brought in several receivers who I think are going to be productive too. They're returning some good things. You already mentioned the offensive line. Several key pieces on defense are back. This was a bad offense last year. And the fact that they've swapped out a lot of those pieces for what, in my opinion, on paper, look like upgrades leaves me very optimistic and excited about 2025.
Well, especially when you look back at how Utah was competitive in every game last season, except for against Colorado.
And even that was
right there
when Wilson throws the interception on the sideline.
Yeah, that one started to fall apart there late. Yeah. And that was with one of the worst offenses in Utah history. And so now you bring in all these new key players. The defense actually held a lot of players, especially when you get guys like Levani Damuni. It was good to see that was made very clear that he's back on the roster and planning to play. So you get that guy with all that experience back at the linebacker position. And the way that they're able to move guys around in the secondary based on who steps up, and hearing about Rabbit Evans, that was one thing in the press conference that really impressed me, where they were saying that Scally pointed him out specifically and said that's a guy that's going to have a big year.
Yeah, I'm really excited about Rabbit. I already talked about Vakalahi as my breakout guy.
Yeah.
Rabbit would be right up there. Another guy, I think he's going to ball. I think that rotation of safeties, when you have Nate Ritchie, Teo Johnson, and Rabbit Evans, the fact that you can have 2 of those 3 on the field at all times, I think that's really exciting for Utah. And another guy I'm really excited about, and he had his ups and downs last year, but man, the flashes are still there. He was by far the best part, probably looking back on it, on Utah's bowl performance against Northwestern a couple years ago. Talk about Jonathan Hall. And when he was in that game, he was balling out. It was not the smoothest transition to linebacker, but he had moments. And whose opinion am I going to trust on Jonathan Hall more, mine or Morgan Scally? I'll take Morgan Scally. And what did Morgan Scally say? He feels Hall's going to be a star. And I'm inclined to believe him. There are some guys on this Utah defense that it's hard not to be fired up about. And once again, like when Utah has plugged in the pieces, I'm not guaranteeing they're going to be better. This is college football. Anything can happen. But I think to not be optimistic about the changes, I don't see the reason not to.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Teo Johnson, John O'Hall, who you brought up, these guys, it was their first year in those new positions. And so, of course, they're going to have a few slip ups, I couldn't believe how much fans, especially on Johnson, were just like, oh, he's just not doing well enough back there at the free safety spot. It's like, yeah, he's learning it, but he was in on a lot of plays. And now you get him in a second year. You look at second year guys at a position with Morgan Scalley, they take the lead.
They do. I think Teo's fantastic in coverage. I think Teo's problem is he struggled to tackle. That feels to me like an easy fix over the course of an offseason. Like just
and you get a guy that was used to being a corner. You don't tackle as much. You know,
he wasn't even a corner. He came in as a receiver too.
Oh, that's right. Started so this is his third position that he had gone. That's a great point. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, he went from receiver to corner. Tackling will take some time, and safeties have to tackle a lot more than corners. And he's going to get that figured out. That's something that Utah's very good at teaching.
Yeah, they do a great job, and he's got great coaches on that side of the ball. I mean, Morgan Scalley working with him, Sharif Shaw back there too, just in the defensive backfield in general. Like, I feel incredibly confident about the guys that are helping him along in his development. And one other thing
for you, real quick: if Smith Snowden moves to the outside, who do you think fills in his nickel spot?
I was thinking about this too. I don't know if Kenan Johnson is a nickel, and this is where it just becomes interesting. But if it's like, who are Utah's three best corners right now? I would go fully healthy Kenan Johnson. I'd go Elijah Davis or Scooby Davis, and then I go Smith Snowden. So it's to me, then it's like just put him out on the field and have him go out there and ball. I don't know if any of those guys are true. That's where maybe Snowden maybe is the best overall corner, but like his size could maybe get him in trouble too. So that's where maybe I would keep him at nickel, but either way, and that's not even factoring in the transfers. Like one of these transfers is going to be impactful. I'm not saying they're all going to start, but like one of them is going to push for playing time. And I do feel optimistic. How do you see it shaking out right now?
Yeah, that's the thing. I thought, would they try to put Nate Ritchie there? Would they try to? Yeah, I don't know. And maybe that just speaks more to Kenan Johnson's being healthy. Like, how healthy is he really? And if they're having to move Snowden out there, I wonder how much he's healed up, or if they're not sure he will. But anyway, just wondering what you thought, because that's one position that I've just thought I don't know for sure. I don't know what they'll do there, but it could be one of the new guys.
They brought three veterans. One from UC Davis who started a lot, another from Texas A&M. Yeah. Didn't play a ton if I remember correctly, but has a lot of potential.
The fact that he was in that program,
and a community college guy who's gotten after it the past couple of years too. So I'm excited to see which of those three guys is going to earn the opportunity to, at worst, be the fourth corner, and at best, maybe even be the third guy too.
Yeah, certainly something to keep an eye on later on in the spring. Yeah.
One other thing Witt said that I thought was interesting was he did say, like, hey, they're excited for the spring because spring is going to allow us to see which spots we need to go back in the portal and add. That's the luxury that spring ball does provide. Not only are you just giving guys the early reps, the Devin Dampier helping him get comfortable with what Jason Beck wants to do at Utah, because even though it's familiar with New Mexico, it's going to be a little different. So you get that in there. You get the reps for the guys who are there, but you can also see like, oh, we didn't go out and get that wide receiver one maybe. Oh, we do need one more defensive tackle. That's where I think it's really I love that Utah's looking at it from that way and not being like, hey, this Dabo of the past, right? Dabo Swinney's been criticized for not using the portal. He did it more this year, and he's gone to the portal for quite the defensive coordinator hire. My goodness, shelling out some cash there.
Yeah.
But I do think it's really smart that Utah's not like, nope, we're still evolving, we're still growing, because that's what the best programs are still doing, is always looking at ways to get better.
Well, and they're so smart to leave so many scholarships open, and they're counting on that. And they're saying, okay, we feel pretty good here. They're not rushing to just give anybody a scholarship. A lot of people were looking at, as soon as they lost Tanauvasa, they're just saying, okay, well, who are they going to get now in the portal? And it's like, well, at this point in the portal, you don't want to just go grab anybody. These kind of, last guys, just be patient, and some new guys will come open. If it's even needed, it might be already on the roster. Yeah,
it might be. So that's fun. Who's going to break out? Sometimes you have injuries and unfortunate things happen too, where it's like, okay, we need to go find someone. I think Leavani Damuni was hurt in spring ball last year. And that was where, looking back at it, I'm sure Utah probably wishes they picked up an extra veteran linebacker in that spot. So something to continue to monitor with Utah's roster for sure. Speaking of linebackers, they got a pretty good one they have to replace. Karene Reed is off the NFL, and he got an invite to the Senior Bowl. We're going to talk about how exciting that is for Karene and the opportunity he has to be competing against some of the best players that are entering their names into the NFL draft. Discussing that all in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. This message is brought to you by Prize Picks. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prize Picks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoff or regular season, Prize Picks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. Now it's playoff time, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks. Here's how it works. You simply pick more than or less on at least 2 players, and if your picks hit, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Yes, that's right, 1,000 times your money, just by making a few simple picks. For me, I'm about the hot takes this season. This week on Prize Picks, I'm looking at Lamar Jackson to go for more than 250 yards passing. I think he's going to ball out in Buffalo. Then Travis Kelce, he always turns on come playoff time, so I'm going to roll with him to have more than 70 receiving yards. It's fun to predict and easy to do. Plus, with Prize Picks Flex Play, you can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. With the app, you get your winnings fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's all caps, no spaces, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, Matt, one of the easiest Utah football players to root for over the past few years has been Karene Reed. Just a guy who goes on the field, makes plays every time he's out there. And I mean, he's just a baller, a leader out there too. And one of the bases of this recent Utah dynasty they had, where yes, last year's didn't go to plan, but a key player in back-to-back Pac-12 titles and one of the best linebackers in the Pac-12 a couple years ago. And even though he was hurt in the Big 12 this past year, he got invited to the Research Senior Bowl, which is where some of the top NFL draftable players get an invite to that are upperclassmen, and he'll have an opportunity to impress NFL scouts. I know he's a little undersized going into the process, but I think once he gets in front of these scouts and makes some plays in the team drills and everything, and even in the game, maybe he's going to have a chance to move up some draft boards, Matt.
Yeah. I mean, I love his story, right? He bet on himself. He was originally going to go to Utah State, ends up going to Utah. He walked on, right? I'm pretty sure he walked on. Got starts right away in his first season with Utah. And I think he ended up starting over 40 games for the Utes. Just great story. And I think that he was a little bit, the fact that he signed with Utah State, I think it was a little overlooked just because of that size, like you talked about. And if that's the same thing with the NFL, like you said, this is a great opportunity for him to showcase his skills and show that, yeah, he might not be the biggest guy, but he gets to the quarterback. He is a great cover guy. He does it all.
Mm-hmm. Even in 8 games, led the linebacker room with 54 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 3 sacks to he's a guy who did it in the front 7. I mean, well, he did it all in the front 7, but he could do it against the run. He could do it in pass coverage too. When I think of Karene Reed, like like plays that jump out, I have one in my head. Matt, I'm curious if it's the same. What Karene Reed play jumps out to you?
Oh, I think that pick 6 that he had. Yeah. What year was that? That was
UCLA. Right? UCLA pick 6. I was right in that end zone actually too. Like that was right in front of me. So I will never forget seeing him take that away from who's the Oregon quarterback, UCLA guy. Okay. I'm mad at myself that I forgot to. I will see if he might be Oregon starter next year. But anyways, that's the one that stands. And Utah needed that. They won that game 14-7. That was an ugly game. That was like the first play too. So for him to make that big of a play, his instincts, his timing, he's just ball. He's a baller, man. I'm really excited about him. I do think that he's going to end up being I think he's going to for sure go in the first 5 rounds, and I think he'll have a chance to be a day 2 pick even.
Yeah, I think that he's proven himself. I mean, he did 4 straight years where he was a starter. He was everything you could ask for. His leadership skills, just who he is as a person. He's going to be a great NFL fit. And I think that the NFL executives have learned that defenders coming from Morgan Scalley's program do great in the NFL. And so, he's going to get his shot.
He is, and he deserves it. His brother Gabe too. I was looking over his bio. I remember running by his brother Gabe, helping Utah break through to that first Pac-12 title back in 21-2 a couple of years ago. So yeah, credit to him. And just speaking of his leadership, Matt, that's something I feel like that is kind of being overlooked a little bit right now. Like that is a huge thing that Utah has to replace. Karene Reed gone, Junior Tafuna gone, Cam Rising gone, Brant Keithy gone. There's a leadership void a little bit. I'm not saying that they don't have other guys who can step up, but it's crazy you lose that much veteran leadership. Van Fillinger, Zamiah Vaughn, like. Wow, that's a lot.
Well, and Kyle Whittingham mentioned that they talked about the culture in the press conference, and Whittingham really just said it's going to be on these new seniors. It's going to be on a few guys. I think Morgan Scally chose two guys, right? It was was it Tao Johnson and
I think did he bring up Teo and Smith Snowden as the guys who need to step up as leaders?
and be leaders, and so. They're putting it out. I thought that was interesting. They're not saying that the coaches need to create that culture, but in this new era of NIL where you have so much roster turnover, it's up to the team to help the new players see this is what our culture is, and it will be interesting to see which guys step up because they're going to need a lot.
This is the most excited I've been about seeing who the Utah captains will be. Normally, it's just like, oh yeah, Cam Rising. Oh yeah, it's so and so. Like I don't know. If I had to guess, Devin Dampier will be one of them probably, and like. Spencer Fano, but we'll see. Like who are going to be those? Demooney will have a great chance to be another one too. You talked about Teo and Snowden haven't already been mentioned. Lander Barton's another one. I think he could be right in there too. So a lot of candidates and a leadership void that, if filled correctly, could propel Utah all the way to the Big 12 championship game, and that's something that is incredibly exciting. Matt, always appreciate you coming by. If people want to get more of your work, where do they need to head over to?
Yeah, you can check me out at utah.rivals.com or check me out on Twitter. I actually just put up in the press conference, Kyle Whittingham talked about the 3,500 and 2,500, kind of the ideal 3,500 passing yards, 2,500 rushing yards. And I put up a thing on there just saying, here's who I think, if that were to happen, here's how I think it would be spread out. And that might be something fun to look at. So go take a look at that.
Yeah, it's something that is was an intriguing answer for sure, and something I definitely want to talk about on a future show. But make sure you guys head over, give Matt a follow. Matt, always great having you on, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. We'll be back with you tomorrow talking the latest Utah football and Utah athletics news.